Hello, my name is Linda Pescatello, and I am a distinguished professor in the Department of Kinesiology in the Human Performance Laboratory at the University of Connecticut. I would like to thank the National Academy of Kinesiology annual meeting organizers and the theme of this year's meeting, Kinesiology's Social Justice Imperative, for inviting me as a new fellow to give a TED Talk about my scholarly and professional contributions to our field. And here you see the Gamble Pavilion, which is both the home of our department and our research laboratories. So the scholarly and professional contributions I will highlight in my presentation are post-exercise hypotension, which I'll tell you more about in a moment, which led me to work in personalized exercise prescription involving the FIT principle and the American College of Sport Medicine guidelines for exercise testing and prescription, or GTEP, as the book is affectionately called, the 2018 physical activity guidelines for Americans, of which I was an advisory committee member, and our newest innovation is the P3X prioritize, personalize, and prescribe exercise algorithm that, again, I'll tell you a little bit more about. Well, my professional work began, it's hard to believe, in the early 1980s with a cardiac rehab program at a community hospital in Connecticut. And here, yes, this is me here. You see my boss, who I was very fortunate to have, Dr. Charlie Leach, and a patient from our cardiac rehab program. And we had just finished a run to raise funds for the American Heart Association. Well, I must acknowledge Dr. Leach. I was very unfortunate to work for him because he was a pioneering preventive cardiologist at the time. And at the time I was working in cardiac rehab, what I noticed is that when I checked my patients in and then checked them out, that their blood pressure was consistently lower after leaving the cardiac rehab exercise session than before. Right around that time, I read an anecdotal report by William Fitzgerald, who was a PhD student, and I'll read his quote to you. Serendipity led to the discovery that jogging depressed my high blood pressure after completing the run. Sometimes my pressure rose to pre-jogging levels within 4 to 10 hours afterwards, and sometimes it did not. And William Fitzgerald labeled his spurious discovery post-exercise hypotension. And one of the things Dr. Leach, again as a pioneering preventive cardiologist, introduced me to was ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. And he was using this technology in the 1980s to diagnose hypertension with his patients well before it has become established as the gold standard method to do so. And this gave me an idea that perhaps with ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, we could monitor the effect of exercise on our patients outside of the artificial confines of the laboratory, under conditions of daily living when stresses are highest, and just to determine, does the exercise blood pressure lowering effects persist outside of the artificial confines of the laboratory. And here you see what has become the prototype study design that we first used in 1991 to investigate post-exercise hypertension and to see how long the effects persist. So the subjects first get a maximal graded exercise test to screen for any occult cardiovascular disease, and also to determine the exercise intensity of the exercise experiments. Now you can see the experimental sessions, there doesn't necessarily have to be only two, but in the case of our first study, Typically, what you will see is a control session of seated rest, and then an exercise session that now can be at various intensities and various modalities, but they are blinded to the subjects until they have to participate in the particular session, and they're done in random order. There's a baseline period of blood pressure assessment, the experiment itself, and at the conclusion of the experiment, the subjects are attached to an ambulatory blood pressure monitor until the next morning. Now, this is the study that put post-exercise hypotension on the map. You can see that it was published in 1991, and we just, again, by present day standards, it looks like we did pick the right 6 men with hypertension. And what you can see here is they come into the laboratory, and that's what you see as rest. They have their stress tests, so you see the spike in or peak in blood pressure at the conclusion of the stress test. There is a cool down, and then they are attached to an ambulatory blood pressure monitor. And in this case, it was for 13 hours afterwards. And without even knowing what the numbers are, you can see that compared to when they came in, blood pressure is consistently lower throughout the waking hours. And in fact, what we found is that blood pressure was anywhere from 4 to 10 millimeters of mercury lower on the days these men exercised than if I had graphed the control sessions here. And so this now seminal study has led to the established definition of post-exercise hypertension. That is a decrease in blood pressure below control levels after an acute exercise bout that persists for a major portion of the day. But again, it is important to have that control comparison due to the circadian variation in blood pressure. So this was the early 1990s, and in the late 1990s, Dr. Paul Thompson came to Hartford Hospital in Connecticut, which was 20 miles down the road from UConn, to become director of preventive cardiology. And I have been fortunate enough to be collaborating over 25 years now with Dr. Thompson, not only on post-exercise hypertension studies, but also research projects involving personalized exercise prescription. And over these 25 some years, this is what we have learned about post-exercise hypertension. It occurs immediately. It occurs independent of your fitness levels. It persists throughout the day when blood pressure is typically at its highest levels. It can normalize blood pressure in some people. It is directly related to exercise intensity. It is correlated with the blood pressure response to exercise training, and Dr. Thompson and I both feel that the chronic BP effects of exercise are largely due to post-exercise hypertension. You can see the greatest blood pressure reductions occur in those with the greatest need of exercise blood pressure lowering effects, those with the highest resting blood pressure levels. And we have recently published a study that we continue to study and investigate that it can be used as a self-monitoring behavioral strategy to increase exercise adherence. So another very important person in my career was my major advisor in graduate school, Dr. David Camion. And he taught us the importance of being involved with the American College of Sports Medicine and also the guidelines for exercise testing and prescription, because they provide the foundation and they are the gold standard for the work we do in exercise testing and exercise programming. And so with his encouragement, I became very involved with the ACSM certification process and noticed the students were very confused about how to go about designing an exercise prescription for clients and patients with multiple cardiovascular disease risk factors and also chronic diseases and health conditions. So this gave me an idea, and I formulated the FIT principle of exercise prescription. An exercise prescription is the process whereby the recommended physical activity regime is designed in a systematic and individualized manner by this principle: the frequency, intensity, time, and type of exercise. And when I would introduce this acronym to the students, much of their confusion about how to go about designing personalized exercise prescriptions, again, for multiple chronic diseases and health conditions, dissipated. I then formally introduced the FIT principle of exercise prescription in the 8th edition of the guidelines, for which I was associate editor. The FIT principle continued to frame the exercise prescription guidelines of the college in the 9th edition, for which I was the senior editor, and I am proud to say that until this day, with the release of the newest 11th edition in March of 2021, the FIT principle still frames the exercise recommendations of the college. So as I was senior editor back in 2013, I had another idea and felt that we should be capitalizing on the guidelines for which I was senior editor. And at that time, the 9th edition was the best-selling version of all times. And with the help of my colleagues at UConn in the Center for Excellence on Teaching and Learning, we developed the online exercise prescription graduate certificate program. Here you see our website, and these are the 3 courses the certificate program consists of. Again, they're all online. The first, which is the fundamentals of exercise prescription, is the prereq for the other 2 that can be offered in any order: KINS 5508, exercise prescription for chronic disease and health conditions, and KINS 5595, special topics in exercise prescription. And again, we were launching this program in 2015. And then in 2016, I was asked to become a member of what is now called the 2018 Physical Activity Guidelines Advisory Committee to write the scientific report. And again, we started our work in 2016. We published the report in February of 2018. And again, I felt the momentum of my involvement with these guidelines and being on top of the literature in our area would clearly give the certificate program continued interest in and momentum. And you can see the exercise prescription program continues to grow, and it has enabled me to combine my teaching with my research, because one of the projects the students have in one of the courses is to write a systematic review on a topic of their choice involving exercise prescription. And the students end up presenting their systematic reviews, and some do become meta-analysis at scientific meetings, both at the regional and national American College of Sports Medicine meeting. And we've also presented at the American Geriatric Society meetings. You can see the papers in which their systematic reviews and meta-analysis have been published, very high quality, respected journals in our field. It brings in entrepreneurial funding to my laboratory, and it has led to the development and beginning of the validation of a clinical support decision system we have developed for exercise prescription for adults with cardiovascular risk factors and multiple chronic diseases and health conditions, called the P3X, which stands for Prioritize, Personalize, and Prescribe Exercise Algorithm. And this algorithm was just featured in the American College of Sports Medicine Exercises Medicine e-newsletter. You can see the description. And also, I would like you to note that you can download our white paper, which describes the contents of the algorithm, from the Mayo Clinic's Proceedings, Innovation, Quality, and Outcomes, journal website. So all these ideas would have gone nowhere if it weren't for the hard work of my students, my colleagues, many of who have become my friends, as we have collaborated to make these ideas a reality. Here you see me with my students over the years, involved with some of our research projects, social events at the American College of Sports Medicine, and in my backyard for a picnic. More of my colleagues here, these are past presidents from New England ACSM, and Dr. Ethan Nadell, Priscilla Clarkson, and then our annual Women's Walk at the ACSM meetings. And I leave you with subjects from a Tai Chi training study we're currently involved in that I'm sure will lead to more ideas. Thank you for your time and attention.